1973, Alejandro Jodorowsky released the critically baffling, artistic splatter that was The Holy Mountain. And since then, here on YouTube or any written form that I've searched for, I've yet to see a real attempt to sift through the work, to pull it apart and give some kind of explanation other than the all too common, it was about personal growth or spiritual enlightenment. Not that those people reviewing the film are wrong, but it really is that dense.
Each stone has a soul.
In part one of the old-time gospel of the Holy Mountain, even I did not carefully trace out the details of the film. We essentially walked around the perimeter, detailing the context and history, and poked around nice little factoids about the Holy Mountain's legacy. I don't really blame others for not trying to dive into the nitty-gritty here, because it's understood on a kind of personal level that doing that kind of work is a very daunting task. Like, there's too much put on display, too many odd additions or things that are hidden in the frame. You know, the subtext is constantly tapping at your window, asking if you can guess, why was this put here? The sheer volume of references or symbols forces us, the viewers, to zoom out and just focus on the larger ideas, the grand narratives or lessons in the film, at least on the first viewing. After you can actually digest the entire story and have a sense of its overall movement, then it's time to get all the puzzle pieces fit together. So let's try to start that. So what is Terra? In order to understand the Holy Mountain, we have to first gain some knowledge about the Terra system. I understand I might have lost some people there, or you're already rolling your eyes, but I promise we're not going to get stuck in quackery or esoteric mumbo-jumbo, but I believe that almost no one watching this has any real idea of what Terra is or what Terra cards actually are.
Okay, I was wondering who the father of my baby was.
I'm solely searching for the father of your baby.
Now, most tarot decks would show that this is the card of strength.
This deck is absolutely...
And you know what? You're not listening to me.
Tarot and esoterica can be overwhelming.
Call me now for your free tarot reading. And you know what? You're not listening to me. His eyes are almost spooky, they're so pretty.
But there's this big war trying to basically destroy humanity using human technology, break away civilization. They're going to merge with machine. No, it's a human test about building us up.
Don't you really want to know?
Terra is not a fortune-telling game. Tarot cards cannot see your future or tell you how much money you're going to make. It kind of can, but something else is at work here behind the curtain. Now, to make a confession, I myself am kind of a fortune teller in that I can see my son's future, right? At least to a degree that he would be surprised with as time marches on. I can recognize patterns in his development that he probably can't and wouldn't want to hear from me anyways, a familiar story for a lot of family relationships. For him, I know that the first love is typically not the last, and there will be joy and heartbreak along the way. If you get old enough, read enough, observe the patterns around you, you can get a sense of what shapes and movements that life can go through. What it's like to develop, to grow and experience the world in a typical manner. Not just for other people, but for your own adventure as well. Being able to recognize major shifts in the plot. If you've got your head on straight, it might lead to a position of self-actualization and being prepared to die a dignified man. If you condense down the ramblings that I just spewed out, that is Terra. That is what Terra is, a realization that magic is a bit more real than you thought it was. Terra is a recognition of a story, of your story. It tells a story, a typical but large enough story of development, of growth, and from parts of that you glean some kind of meaning. Little hints that you yourself create or that miraculously come to you by listening to that story. So, tarot cards. In the major arcana there are 22 cards, and those major cards, ordered and numbered, paint the picture of a full life, or at least a grand quest of personal development. They encapsulate everything from times of joy and sorrow, fortune and war, hope and victory. In order, they tell the story of humanity's spiritual evolution from the innocent fool into enlightenment. The major arcana is paired up with cards from the minor arcana, cards that represent smaller, more immediate moments in our life, the daily activities, the current mood we're inhabiting. These minor cards add in some of the minute textures to the larger story. There are actually a lot of tarot cards in this movie. Now, here is how the little dog and pony show is done. The cards will show you a little story, a fool or meeting with a wise man, a seductive woman, and then your mind gives a little flash, mapping that character, that story, onto someone or some event in your life. It's the same phenomenon in biblical scripts or Hindu mythology, in all great stories. Some schmuck did this to so-and-so, and it's a generic enough story, so the message and the meaning you get from it is continuously relevant through time. So you see the story, and then you realize, oh wow, I should be more forgiving to my friends and family who I am being kind of rude to lately. Or the bad guys in the story are always acting like this, and holy moly, that's how John Johnson was acting, and maybe he's up to no good and I should distance myself from him and his ilk. Or how about this tarot card that told a story of creating a family and having children is somehow related to this woman I'm seeing and constantly having relations with. Wow, that's so Terra. An ordinary tarot card reader is using the cards to channel something along the lines of intuition, asking them to think and ponder their own situation. If you're familiar with the cards, the characters in the story, you yourself are going to be filtering the message of them, interpreting them and fitting them into your current life. So that was just a quick rundown, and again, I'm not trying to sell you a ticket to the spaceship or asking you to drink the Kool-Aid. Terra is a very large part of Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain, so I just wanted to give you a crash course. With that little explanation out of the way, let's try to work through The Holy Mountain. The alchemist, played by Jodorowsky himself, opens up the film. Alchemy, in a nutshell, is trying to turn shit into shinola. This alchemical process works on a couple layers here. The film is about moving towards enlightenment, about going from the state of negredo, a state of embarrassing unawareness, childish, the ordinary monkey boy with a tail, all the way to the philosopher's stone, rubedo, a wholeness of self, the golden aurid Super Saiyan. This path is the alchemical process of the film, but Jodorowsky is also trying to recreate cinema in a way that inspires, that helps raise the consciousness of the audience, or at least points them in a good direction. In a time where he sees the movie theater experience consisting mostly of trash, an experience that by the end simply distracts and dumbs down an audience, Jodorowsky is trying to create art. taking color, sound, and film and making something magical. Right, so what you're seeing here are actual movements from a Japanese tea ceremony, which is not just an occasion to enjoy a bit of caffeine, but a typical tea ceremony is purposefully drawn out. It gives people time to wind down, listen to the background music, to separate the immediate moment from the ordinary. The alchemist then christens and essentially baptizes two ladies, cleaning and taking away their hair. The film wants us to start fresh on the right side of the bed because what we're about to witness is going to be a little strange. Okay, that was a lot there, so let's try to break it down piece by piece. First off, we have the inner eye, the eye that is finally opening up towards a greater consciousness, towards a greater spiritual world, the eye that is now able to have perception beyond ordinary run-of-the-mill sight, the ajna chakra, or the unconscious mind. Next, the heart, that is also in the process of opening, and believe me when I say that your heart will go on the anahata chakra. Open means we're looking for new, novel experiences, a feeling of expansion. Up next is the target, something to move towards, or a divine coordinate, a direction to be heading towards. This is the axis mundi, the North Star, something that we need to align with. We have the eye of Buddha, also known as the eyes of wisdom, meaning that you can see beyond the material. Your vision is beyond a world of darkness and suffering, a better perspective. Up next is a nice little pearl right here, and this represents the soul, but a soul that needs to be polished, cleaned up with a little chim chim churu. Now the door to the soul opens and we have a key, but it's not just a simple symbolic key opening a way to new adventures. No, this key has the momentum of the Holy Trinity behind it. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So interestingly enough, with the key, you're opening up and unlocking a fourth member of the gang, making the final group not a trinity, but a quaternity. That's a whole rabbit hole in and of itself right there. Oh, but okay, let's go down it. The Christian Trinity is seen as incomplete. You have the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but is there anyone you might have left out? You probably should throw in the feminine just for good measure, the creators of life. The Catholic Church has actually done some of the work here with their Assumption of Mary, incorporating the divine and eternal feminine into the mix. You know, it's the other half of humanity that men need to match up with if they want to keep the experience of life going. And if you're making stories for young men, somehow bringing in the idea of women would not be such a bad idea. And that would have to be an upgrade to a system of 4. Earth, wind, fire, water, and it all has to revolve around something, so let's make that heart. Have it revolve around the spirit, around a higher plane, around a connection to everything. The quaternity is a more balanced system, the 4 elements brought and connected together. It's a symbol that has for a very long time pointed to the idea of wholeness, to the ever-spinning wheel of the universe, the center of everything, the connection and hub of all life and spirit, with the center marking salvation and grand connection. In terms of Buddhism, the source of all fortune, or from the Chinese, the center of the infinite. To the Slavic and Avaric people, it's the origin of the sun and eternal life. The world being pulled by 4 horses, churning the axis of the universe, as we previously mentioned, the axis mundi. Okay, let's go back to the collages. Where were we? After the key, we have the underworld, the world of the dead, and a place of no imagination, no dreams, a place of wandering and stagnation, the land of the lost. This is a pretty good place to start off, and I think it's here that the main character actually enters the story. We end with one of the dead wrapped in butterfly wings, symbolizing change and metamorphosis. You know, Kafka, that guy. Or maybe you knew that from Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs.
The significance of the moth is change. Our Billy wants to change too.
Our Billy wants to change too, that part. It's not a good thing that they poisoned that idea for you. We then travel back up through the underworld by way of a serpent. This serpent is the Kundalini. Now, the Kundalini is a kind of feminine force lying dormant, and having the snake traverse up through your spirit, through your chakra system, ending up in the final chakra, means you have reached a state of spiritual liberation. Again, we have the unlocking of and connection or union with something feminine, which when finally achieved, ends up connected to all other nodes in the system, waiting for you to join in. We're talking about these pearls surrounding the serpent. These would be the pearls of Eros, a primordial stage of rebirth where the universe, or God himself, is contained. From this state, this pearl, change is coming. That's what that means. And we finally arrive at a small geometric shape. This is the main character's interior sealed off consciousness, contained and bounded in a small, rigid form. All of that encompassed less than 1 minute of screen time. Someone had to do a lot of arts and crafts for that sequence, and I legitimately wonder if any of those collages still exist. From here, we get a nice introduction. One of the most bizarre introductions of a main character. You see this guy with the flies all over his face? Yeah, he is peeing in his pants. That's who we're going to be following for the next couple of hours. And I don't think he ever speaks. Yeah, he never speaks once. So he's covered in flies, his own useless thoughts, meaninglessness, shallow ideas. You'll see that repeated again in the film. This is a man who is lost. He's drunk, surrounded by filth, and completely empty on a spiritual level. You have to start somewhere, drunk, with the world around you falling apart. He is the fool, and here is his card. It's right there. In the Terra system, the fool card is number 0, the beginning of the journey, and on a weird technical level, it is the card or the character that continues along through all the other events. The fool is the one experiencing joy and sorrow, bustling around to meetings with the wise man, or facing difficult choices and judgments. We get another card attached to this disfigured man. This little guy right here is the Mano Poderosa, a popular image within the Roman Catholic Church of Mexico, which, as luck would have it, actually predicts the coming of a Christ-like figure. He is roused by his own monstrous spirit, his own undeveloped spirit. The boys, the children, they're all naked, don't worry about that. They now need to wake up our Christ figure. The hero needs to get a move on. They wander past a fallen Egyptian obelisk. The ruins of ancient greatness litter the ground. A little side note, if you're ever in New York City, there's an actual Egyptian obelisk in Central Park. And it happens to be the same obelisk that's mentioned here as the Needle of Cleopatra. So Egypt apparently gifted the monument to the US, and now it's just sitting in Central Park, where it's sadly getting rained on a lot and deteriorating at a unnecessarily fast rate. So back to the ruins. The world around us is very old and much older than you can imagine. We currently live on a decimated planet with very little knowledge of our past, but the creative process has been going on since time immemorial. The process of waking up, of starting a journey, has already happened many times, and it will continue to happen. The game will not end in your lifetime. So the fool has to leave the Lost Boys, give up being a child, and put childish things behind him. He shoos them away. Well, kind of. Now he has strength, now he has force, he can exert power, and now is immediately angry. Angry at this new responsibility flung on his shoulders, angry at this thing that's woken him up and interrupted his blissful wandering ignorance, angry that he has to make real choices now, angry that the time of childhood has ended and there's a lot more weight on his shoulders. I'm sure people can relate to this clumsy process of maturing. So how does his own unconscious mind deal with his new power? His anger. The unconscious mind decides that the best course of action is to sedate the body. He finds comfort in vice, as many people do. People drink, people do all kinds of substances, and it's usually not done for some grand exploration of altered states or adventure. People usually use substances because they want to feel better or feel different, shift out of the current state they're in right now, and it certainly can be a way to ride out the hardships of a normal life. So once you've gotten adjusted to the water and calmed yourself, you might be ready to explore around, to see the world with a bit more mature eyes. So that's what our fool does. He heads down to Main Street to see what's happening. And what is happening seems a bit strange. When people grow up, everything tends to look a bit different. The rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia get worn down over time. Corruption and shallowness become more and more apparent. McDonald's or James Bond do not have the same attraction or prestige that they did when you were 5 years old. So it's time to walk around, to get a lay of the land. The fool has a lot of work to do, which means we have a lot of work to do. A whole world out there of lizards, of chimpanzees, rainbow rooms, gas chambers, comic books, mountains, German mountain climbers, spiders, and all the other goodies waiting around the bend. But sadly enough, we're going to save that for part 3 of the old-time gospel of the Holy Mountain, or at least continue it in part 3. Just for reference, we did make it through about 6.5 minutes of the film. I promise that we will cover more ground than just 6 minutes in the next video, so thanks for hanging in there. If you like the video and want to help the channel, you can support us on Patreon. If you really enjoy art, if you enjoy someone else's creative output, then try to support some of it. Buy someone's book, buy a learning course, or find a way to get some of their merchandise. It really is the only way to help guarantee that they can continue creating in a world where everything is expected to be free. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Up, up, and away.